super excited to host Jonathon, developer advocate at Speckle. And few facts. You are the first one who I'm interviewing who transitioned from architecture to developer advocate. So I would interviewed a lot of people who transition from AEC to tech background, but this role is the first one, and I'm quite excited to see like whatever the decisions you made, how you chose to this adopt this role, what are the skills you have to learn, and second is the job you're doing at Speckle at community building and engagement. Super inspiring. So kudos on like the great community we have built. So thanks a lot for being on the show.
Yeah, pleased to be here. We've spoken over many years, it seems, it feels, but then, you
For sure. So uh not to date you, Jonathan, from your bachelor degree till this date, if I were to ask three highlights of your career, what would that be?
three highlights. Okay, I would say you have a two-part bachelor's. Between my first part and bachelor's, I had the great pleasure the Will Studios in London. Um, Probably much of my architectural foundation, even belief in can be no dogma, no grand ideas and fun. That's certainly well instilled in me. That while I'm as a part one architectural student, mainline IT support, CAD support was uh, battle stories. Second highlight is probably the last working on the Cross Central, and so this is where we took a huge Zone 1 central to the Eurostar station, if you know it, that had been brownfield, be it some of the greatest nightclubs in London, and transformed it into a new piece of city then 2001, and I think they've just finished building of that. So, my role kind of early stage, but essentially, and then, well, I can only say that it's joining the. They would obviously want me, but it is absolutely huge. Culmination of a lot. You've said decision making. There has not been too many decisions, just have happened other, and I think it's I've ended up, and I probably wouldn't have ended up here, or would have taken a certain best place I can.
Amazing. And like you have like more than 2 decades in the industry. And I was just wondering like what were some tough times for you where you had to make difficult choices or decisions?
I think I've been asked this in job interviews.
Oh,
In
really? I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I think I was asked this. Funnily enough, I was asked when I applied to be auditor for Wandsworth Council in London, a kind of duty point of view, and they said when to make it difficult. Things I've always said is that I actually don't find it difficult to make. Weigh things up one way or the other, but ultimately, I do have an overall vision that um, probably you know what the right answer. If it's, I mean, maybe this is a point of view from a kind of a blessed position. Generally, it makes me happiest is the decision that I am.
Mm,
It's not a philosophy of life, but it's certainly a guiding principle. Uh, difficult because in 20, I think we've seen a few economic downturns. I mean, one we had the application, which in itself took 5, 6, and then the bottom fell out of everything. So Barings Bank, like
mm,
so, just at the point to deliver um, 62 London, there was no cash. So that was not really a difficult decision, but oh my God, what's going to happen now? But
mm,
we plowed through, and by virtue of having luck, fortune, blessings, with a client body who would push things and confident work that we'd all done. And that was payoff. I think I can, blessings. I count blessings. Certainly, the more across those 20 years. We all struggle. We all have choices to make, and I think choice is a better decision.
I see.
But certainly was. Ooh, it's kind of now it's a kind of a complexity. A long-standing meant that when we were making a recommendation to Morrison to say, "Hey, we really need to go Revit," but the logical decision at the time.
Mm.
That's probably the most kind of emotional decision in terms of technology to make. You know, the trans was at uh, MicroStation, and we did Mac and went to PC because Ali had dropped support for the Mac. So that was where we
Mm.
had completely followed the tech and completely revolutionized the hardware that we were choosing to deliver it. So yeah, it was gut wrench making to side.
Yeah, that sounds quite interesting stories. Yeah, I was
So
wondering.
one of the
Yeah,
go
no, no. I think there was some
the
like.
technological choices back in the day. So I think we had a something like that, and it was literally so that we could it was early interop. We were using Rhino just to convert these in a format that Bentley could import before they'd had a kind of a big agreement. So the kind of the early days of Rhino was just there as an interop tool, and then also during in Lightwave anymore, and there were some clever people in Allsop because it was early days of technology. So there was a guy who 50% of his time was operating a sewing machine, and the other 50% of time in a software called Poser. It was articulating kind of avatars, get most of the sort of all three pipeline through that because it had some exploit.
Mm, and I was wondering, like, you saw like the internet wave, mobile wave, cloud wave, blockchain now. Yeah, during that times there were like a lot of promising AEC startups or software. Some continued, some died. Any pattern you found among what survived?
On most of them. In terms of the pattern of success, I was going through university, so yeah, we're really going back now. Computers taboo still, I think, in the design. We were given a week at the and most people by the end of third year were sort of around to make a 3D model so that you could trace it, and that was the extent of technology really when in undergraduate degree. They were moving into professionalism, I find it, or at least my attitude was always finding fitting at the time, and I think that's still kind of a kind of a way of working that I do um, gravitate. I have a tan and can see that and exploit this a tool, whether it's fit for purpose, kind of, let's say that's designed or not. On the wayside, I was so excited. I think who knows, early 2000s by a prototype. I'm trying to struggle for the name. I think it was M6. Probably the first kind of wow. This is what working in 3D first, data centric workflows, and it wasn't vaporware. It did exist, installer, but it never went anywhere. I do have great ideas have kind of sat there and gone one for who knows what reasons. Um, there's nothing I don't know anything about, so I think you put me on the spot if I'm going to reflect on that, or at least I know it's interesting. And I always learn enough to understand kind of the physics or the mechanics of
Mhm.
something. I just
Mhm.
that's I'm a tool user and a tool builder. I do look for the utility more than the novelty, let's say.
Interesting. And what about the Gen AI wave? Like,
The whole when I'm going to go even further back. I've told some of my colleagues this, that when I was in high school, what I wanted to do was work daily in computing, because I've been working in uh, sat on my own or something, just programming and building things and tools and uh, things to myself, and a yearning that I'd quite like to make furniture. And the careers advice in the school saying, well, there's no of those about being architecture. So well, that was the that's where the path begins, a kind of an understanding or lack of understanding that maybe computing might have something more to go for it. But um, I do definitely appreciate the architecture. I like this actually when I'm talking to students. I appreciate architectural education for the roundedness that you get, and I think it does open your eyes. Yeah, an openness to try new things, or an openness. And I think there are other creative industries that do into a career path that can end. And I've known plenty of people who've ended up in very creative industry. Guy who sat next to me who was using a sewing machine for 50% of its time. Tim, I think, was his name. And then from going into architecture, really going through kind of a barren technology time. And it's worth mentioning that while university, that's when the internet happened. Just it seems just to bring your audience really far back before the internet. Some of our architectural computer lab time in telnet forums and text
Ooh.
only chat rooms. Yep, can properly date myself. Um, the journey, really, as I said, is a series of accidents. I think when I graduated my part two, I then went into a period of teaching and doing research and kind of raising my design about what urban should be and what city should be and how cities should relate to the individual and the person. and that's been my kind of backship of yourself and the individual to the kind of build at both kind of tiny scale and also the massive scale
Mm.
technology in that. But it's certainly my overriding beliefs and lights in kind of the industry that we're in. The very first thing I had to do in the very first week of joining Allies and take a building that had been designed with a very custom, and it's kind of very British, and a specific size that wasn't off the shelf. It was a custom brick. It was a beautiful building, and Van needed it to be okay. Now we need to use an off the shelf brick. The windows or the window openings are the right size. How do we do this without cut any? And I thought, well, I can do this because I can do it in Excel. And so parametric design activity was to value engineer writing a formula so that every window would be still positioned, aligned with the internal ceilings, all of that sort of stuff. And I thought, normal way of working. And then everyone around me was saying, well, what the hell is this guy doing? He's just started. He's not AutoCAD or MicroStation as it was at all. And he spent his first week or so in Excel. But to me, that felt normal because that was the task at hand. And I found a tool and I was able to kind of bend it to my will, let's say. And then say what I really enjoyed doing as I was so in King's Cross was the 14, 18-year project of my life. I started to, let's say, externalize what I was doing. So in central London, there is a cathedral right in the middle, St. Paul in London, that you can see it from various places around the city. And there's a piece of probably parchment in Parliament describing exactly this thing needs to be protected, and in formulas for of the air pollution is such that you correct for it, so that technically it's just a geometrical problem. So yes, there's a sight line and there are some rules and they're codified. I thought, well, if you codify it and it has a geometrical solution, given any point on the map, you could automatically say, this is how high I can build. So first things in Excel, because why not? And then actually, I think I taught myself PHP and version 1 or 0.1 of the Google Maps API. I built a web app
Oh.
so that anyone in my team could basically book up the somewhere in London, and it would say how high you could build. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. And again, it was this kind of relationship between it can be done, it's free information, then it should be easy to use or easily accessible. And then just I was constantly tinkering to build tools for making my life easier and adapting those so that others in my team or even more widely on the internet could use them around as well. So really, by the time I get to Speckle, a few more steps, a few more journeys into what is data wrangling, what is event-driven architecture, things of it kind of exploit tools and methodologies. Really, it's been around. There's a lot of complications in technology, a lot of complication in data that's around AEC, and it's needless. It's not needless. It's not without reason. It's not without purpose. But we can do so much more to just make full. I
Mm.
think even to the point where I've been on a mission to not have people have to read DOS PDFs. There are other ways to more readily understand a problem, more readily understand a project. So that's kind of a guiding light. So given all of that, I think when I had a specific problem while still working on these masters, the thing is about working on a master, you're always dealing with someone else's data or someone else's design. So you kind of set the rules and other people respond to them. And you can't really give me a Revit model. Please give me a MicroStation model. Give me a Vectorworks model. If you hadn't asked for that, that's give you. And how do you determine correct and validating the rules and all? Short. I have something like my whole career. Didn't know it. It became increasingly so. So when I started things again, spotting a tool that you might want to use, I spotted Speckle some time ago, really early on, possibly useful to me, but I certainly kept my eye on it. And then joined the community because I was really interested in seeing where it could go and how it could develop. And kind of interested on a self-interested point of view because I had problems and I needed to solve. So it seemed like a duty. And it seemed at some point easier to join the team to contribute to the cycle than it was to continue to watch from the outside. There we
Amazing.
go.
We got a snapshot.
Quite an ambling journey.
Yeah. And uh, can you share how a week in your life at Speckle looks like? What are the different roles and responsibility as a developer advocate you have?
One of the great things about being an architect and one of the great things about being at Speckle is kind of the same answer is, to my way of thinking, I don't like necessarily the same over and over and over again. That would have filled me with horror. And that's another benefit of architecture as a career. General variability of what you're doing, like go from project to project, even to the point where, I mean, developer advocate is one of the hats that I wear, and it's with a kind of a passion to help others. And I think more time is spent thinking about what can we do to satisfy the people who have the same needs that what are the things that we can do to make that experience better, tool better, to communicate how it's working better, or kind of the idea of what Speckle can do to get. That's always been a guide to building things that help people get home on time.
Mm.
But that's not answering what is my week. It's lots of calls, people like yourself, actually, and I do enjoy the fact that I'm seeing ideas right before they exist. And because Speckle's such an enabling technology, I was watching your conversation with Daniel a couple of episodes back, and he was demonstrating all of the cool things they did. I mean, he was able to describe his ARC project to you as effectively, and because it was built from with the and just the enabling technology that we've got here means that, okay, I don't have to fix that. I don't have to solve X. I can have my idea here, a platform or a technology that enables me to do Y and Z. Those conversations are kind of fascinating and exciting. really, because you're seeing things before customers or even before users. Just see Speckle does so much that we could be having different tools in a week like each other. The other aspect of my week that I really do enjoy is because we have an academia program. So we have universities using Speaking, so I get to speak to see new ways of teaching the students of the future. Actually, not to teach BIM is kind of a bit boring, but teaching new ways of thinking, all of the things that I've kind of grown to love, which is kind of embracing technology for making better decisions or quicker decisions or even more innovative outcomes. And so speaking with educators, how they kind of leverage new ways of working into teaching. Um, and the other thing that we get to do, my little team itself, is when we're speaking to users, Speckle Community Forum. So responsive, I think, is the kind of the politest way of saying it. You get a lot of love back from the people to us every day, even if it's bug reports, because we're able to get an answer pretty, certainly extremely quickly. And it's a day where I might spend like helping people on the forum, and some of that help is saying that seems to be a legitimate problem. I'll go and try and see if I can reproduce it. If we can or we can't reproduce it, then we sit down and we talk with the engineers. What's the solution here? What is the possible solution? Is this the way to answer the question? So there's plenty of XY problems. Want to do this? Well, do you really want to do them? I do enjoy those moments. And from a point of view of user advocacy, not just developer advocacy, of what we're building, the problems that people have. And I think I do in that I am able to present the point of view of the user to the engineering team, but I also fingers enough to understand their concerns and their opportunities or their kind of their dynamic as well.
It's, it's it gives me like you have some part of like a product manager's head as well, translating what people are building and insights into what should be developed or should be put in the roadmap or something.
I don't. I can see what you're saying. I don't. From that point of there are people on the team who have a kind of vested interest into specific parts. I mean, it's an interesting place to be at Speckle because yes, there's a product, but ultimately we also have 30 products because each one of the connects that we have, the website, the database, the APIs, all of these things are all things that could be owned. Why position? Because I get to play with it all on behalf of the user. I kind of the pretty seriously. There are times when it's my position to shout loudly, no, no, this needs to be fixed, or at least if it's not there yet, this needs to happen. It's really, yeah, that's the kind of the luxurious part of it.
Yes.
I do take it very seriously, the advocacy part. My duty, kind of professionally with our users, whether they're working in CAD and Revit on complete AEC. And then the times when I get to exercise my AEC hacker muscles, and I'll jump into
Mm,
a Python script or something like that and say, well, look, Speckle does, but because Speckle does so many things and easily and just solve your specific problem that is particular to one user. And we take that very seriously.
got it. Yeah. And Jonathan, I'm curious, like, what are KPIs or success metric for a role like yours have?
I think we're kind of learning on that one. How would I say? Okay, so let's say a company comes to Speckle and says, "Well, we have this particular problem at hand. We quite like to adopt to what we want to do, whether it's on collaboration or cooperation, communication. We don't quite know where to start, and can you help?" And that could be, okay, well, let's look into more about what your problems are. What are the specific things you're looking to achieve? The KPIs or OKRs kind of activity is fairly straightforwardly that company starts 0 accounts and end up with 5, 10, 15,
Mm,
100 easy to measure. Um, less easy to measure is that um, the right fit for their time.
mm,
That's where we work together organizations with users to see what are you actually trying to achieve. Is this easier? Typically, um, we know pretty quickly that we can solve a lot of problems for them. But, that's more qualitative. It's difficult to see APIs. We do measure on the website. We measure Saturdays, and we measure constantly talking to the community forum. We're sending out user interview. We're getting feedback on whether we're doing a good job, and the whether we're doing a good job does some indication of whether the community and advocacy team is successful. Ultimately, we're measured by the same criteria as the product and engineering team. Are people using?
got it.
Whether we can translate active users into, is that the job of the or is it a team? Difficult to
Mm,
judge. We can have instinctive ideas, and we're learning. The Speckle team, since I've joined it, has gone from, I think it was 18 people when I started. Now it's 30 something people over 2 years. So it's,
growing
yeah, there's a lot
fast.
of learning going on. Joined not as a developer advocate, was a BIM data analyst, data wrangler
Ah,
in the team. So I'm learning as I go what a developer advocate is, for instance.
yeah. So, Jonathan, if I am, let's say I'm a last year architecture student and my goal is to become developer advocate at Speckle, what are the skills I should learn to be a good fit for this role?
Empathy. I think even if um, you have to put yourself in the shoes of others, and I think um, clearly there's technical competence. There is an ability. There's a will. There's a hunger for finding solutions. Is definitely huge, but none of that means anything really in a position where you can understand someone else's problem, because translating someone else's problem into something that is actionable is part of the skill. And I think a lot of, as I look in tech, tech outside EC, developer relations, developer advocacy tends to come from the tech. And as someone who is adept at talking to people, the thing I like about that works with me is that we've come from the industry, so we've got the domain knowledge,
Mm.
experiences as a real estate developer or a structural engineer or as an architect. We bring to it, and now we're able to understand really kind of leak and also what they're touching day to day. So from a point of view of if you're an architect age 20 and want to become a developer advocate, that's an unusual choice to make, I think. My definite preference would go and be an architect and learn what um, no matter what aspect of that is very role. If you're on tech, there's plenty of roles that you take before you then in a position to want to read. Part of where I am at the age I'm at, is I do want to give why I'm here I am. But I think it's not where I would. I needed to learn that. Yeah, it was interesting journey.
I see. Because like empathy is not like teacher, it comes with experience and like 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 for example, like one of the thing I really appreciate. So I was like also in early days Speckle tinkerer, and I spent like few hours, just going through each and every documentation. And it was one of the first software in AC came across where the whole library was very well documented. Like, and while
Mhm.
reading, actually, I might have a YouTube video where I'm just going through and like learning thing. Oh, that's why they did this way. Oh, that's why. And then I grew appreciation for the complex engineering that has done by Speckle. Like, okay, this is how they optimize geometry, export, and batching. So, like, kudos to like it goes where to the path of like making it accessible, because what I've seen is like there are a lot of people like me who come from like a computational designer to like hacker software developer to get like gradually turn like into professional software developer, and depending on
Mm.
which stage, like some of the terminology of like that software development, if a computational designer is using, they feel like okay, I feel I'm out of place. So what's the right level of information exposure so that they become curious tinkerer and then deeper and casually build up information. So it's also very tricky and challenging task.
It's nice to hear you say that we've done a good job because we do. We're very self-critical about we could and hear from plenty of people who tell us that we're not quite doing a one of the things I do think we is teach by doing. So much effort to tutorials and demonstration as we do documentation, because I mean anything that you have to say about the kind of the core accessibility of Speckle itself entirely of Dimitri, who obviously kicked it off. And I do wonder, I don't wonder, I do believe that part is again that Dimitri, founder, is all architectural background, a kind of a holistic
Mm.
solving problems, or what is the important problem to solve. Any software projects, it's, and I think uh, and on, and that's why there is now the kind of a community around building Speckle itself, but the wider community of people who can just drop in and start hacking on it. Um, And I think ultimately it's a simple understanding that I'm with objects, and we all understand what, and we can all look them up in a book or a recipe. All of these different metaphors can exist for data as it exists in Speckle, because a unique thing. We have a
Right.
lot of people who to spec it's a conversion tool, and it isn't. Conversion is a side effect I've started describing it as. Mostly there's a hunger from people like yourself who've been working as architects or engineers to, I know that I've put a lot of effort into putting all of this information in. How do I get out?
Yeah.
And that's the people from the computational design point of view.
Nice. And Jonathan, for like adoption of Speckle, what has worked out well? Is it top down or bottom? And what I mean by, do you think a curious developer tinkerer when they start with Speckle
Mhm.
and then they promote it to okay the business or exec, or you go with the exec and then it's a forced upon. So
It's a good question. I think we concentrating on the as it's described, the bottom up,
mm,
the person who wants to go home on time, or the person who wants to build something cool to make their life easier or better or more innovative. The genesis of what Speckle's able to offer. We speak their language. At some point, we do start talking to people who maybe used to be in that role, and they're in a position to say, well, I have a team, computational designers or hackers, team enablers, or, there's lots of gurus very around the industry. I'm now in a position where I want to have the best technology to deploy for my team. And we
mm,
are starting to have great conversations with people who have made that step. And I think it's people my age, or maybe even a bit young, who have gone through all of that. The hungry 20-year-old, the hungry 23-year-old, looking for cool stuff to do. Now to equip others. And I guess that's not even top down. That's just talking to the people who want to put the right tool in people's hands. So
mm,
that's not really. It stops being bottom up, but it's kind of the. What would you? I don't know.
yeah.
Still learning the jargon.
Yeah, but I get the point. And any particular observations on geographies where Speckle is more adopted? Because, like, from my observation, I see relatively lesser discussion of Speckle in India versus in US or Europe. So, just yeah.
Discussions. I think we are predominantly European based. I mean, doesn't know we don't have an office. We are a completely distributed team, so there are specklers everywhere. But typically, we're in Europe just because it's more manageable. In terms of club, there is a kind of a growing set in India, let's say, enabled by what Speckle's able to do. So they might be a large team of SketchUp or
Mm,
scholars in India working side by side with a company in, I don't know, Toronto, and Toronto team in Revit producing documentation, the design team are in everything in SketchUp, and Speckle allows them to both work at the same time. Then those both teams can both work with some equanimity. So I do masters of teams in India, and also actually um, anyone else does, and those developer relations conversations. Of conversations I do have with companies in India, looking to say, well, these are the next tools for AEC. It's quite a broad
Oh,
spread. I think regionality is it's the whole. We I have diaries to book that start in 5 a.m. and they go till midnight. To get too many of those at both ends.
I see.
But it was also why we really like, and I really spend a lot of energy and love on the forum, the community forum, because it does obviously allow us to have a kind of a asynchronous way to support the world.
Got it. I see. And does organizing hackathon or SpeckleCon also falls under your role?
I'm part of a team that does that. I yeah, there isn't one person who runs, but there is a different thing to it. So the team that has grown up now inside Speckle that is dedicated to outreach and the marketing, social medias. We all work together and try and buffer the engineering team away from these things. So we definitely do have a team that covers um, ambassadorial events, attending conferences, making speeches, academics. That's a kind of specialized role, or roles. We each contribute to that. I think the with a kind of an appetite or the whole team to kind of get involved in that, because it's still touching the okay, well, what if I spent the week and it's slightly away from the job, just the same as it is slightly away from the job for the computational engineer to join a hackathon. Likewise, the kind of the Speckle team themselves. We have, as this distributed team, to organize regional, I think 2 or 3 times a year, the entire team gets together in person, and some of the best innovations for new ideas and new products, parts of Spec have come from on range in those in-person meetings. So the most recent of those was the launch of Speckle Automate, which allows you to kind of deploy code. So every time you publish data to Speckle, that was entirely a project that came out from in Lisbon, I believe, just 2 years ago. Just the opportunity to work on something else. So hackathons are attractive to everybody, but organizing them, yeah, that's the Speckle growth.
Got it. I see. And like, what's coming next? Speckle Automate. After that, like, what's on the future roadmap? Like, let's say we are in 2030. How are people
Mm-hmm.
using Speckle?
Well, let's do the baby steps. I think we have a conference in November, SpeckleCon. We've got some exciting things to talk about then. But more broadly, you're talking a bit bigger picture. Manage data, and we kind of access to data once it's been. We from the day zero in a kind of open format of data. Really says that data, it can be two-dimensional, it can be a stream of data about people moving through a field. It could be anything. So I think the world's kind of to a degree, it's an unknown future, because what we really want to do now and what we're able to do right now, because we know what the problems are now. We don't necessarily know what the problems are 30 years down the line, or in 2030, just 5 years down. Certainly no restriction why AEC is, and just recently around, someone asked, actually, yeah, I posted that my week project was learning Go and client in Go, and someone said, well, no one in the AEC is using Go, using Python and C#. And well, that may be true. That's because applications require those languages to dealing with them directly. Actually, there's nothing special about AEC data at all. It's Speckle in the data. And so actually you could bear any programming language or any kind of other technology. But the flip side of that is there's nothing special about AEC data. It could be data produced by developers. It could be data published by someone doing something that we have no concept of. We have a schema that relates to 3D and metadata. That lends itself to anything. Right in the teams, let's say domain experts in engineering and architecture and we're focused. There's whatever the kind of the caption under this is, there's nothing.
Yeah, it's 3D geometry data translated from various applications. So that 3D could be jewelry or yacht. Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really fun. One of the things that I do get to see talking to users as well. We know that there are people really stretching what the definition of AEC is right now. So in 1 week, I could speak to someone working on a wind farm, or the north, and in the same time, I could be speaking to someone who's looking at the underside of boats while they're both connected by the sea. They're kind of utterly. I think the kind of someone said on LinkedIn, the biggest buzzword is digital twins. Well, it isn't just built. Ourselves could have digital twins of your body and track of. Speckle's pretty good at keeping track of data, so it could be anything. With someone who makes dental implants. We've had people talking about prosthetic limbs. We've been speaking to people who want support, like support recovering from injuries. So yeah, all of these things are technically not AEC at all, but it's just right.
I see. That's interesting. Like it's an open source library. Apart from contributing to the code of like custom connector or various other things,
Mhm.
what are various ways one could contribute to Speckle?
Great question, and one I really enjoy answering because I post on our social media to contribute. And while we're dealing with a very industry specific problem, it's the industry specific problems that we need to hear about, because so the greatest contribution give us is what are your pain points? What is preventing you? What is stopping you get full potential out of your designs? What do you need to do? And we can only respond that when we hear it. So people can do is come talk to us. If we're not doing what you want, it's because we're desperate and hungry to learn. From a developer point of view, actually, because we so much, it can be quite intimidating. So if you're motivated to produce new parts of Speckle, the Speckle Automate that we launched last year, we're entering into public beta this coming number is really an opportunity to extend Speckle any way you wish. Currently, or to have a function uh, or a facility do something with the data before it then goes into another application. You can actually build a self-contained application or a program or a script. It can be as simple or as complex as you deployed on Speckle Automate, so that we can now have a raft of new ideas or new functionality just built on top of the Speckle platform, whether it's to do with generate geometry or just quality. Um, there's that then contributes to a public library of functions that other people can then deploy onto their project. If you've used then that workflow you can have on there, contribute something to that, be able to take and have you of it in their projects.
Mm. Thanks. I have one situation question. Let's say I'm a computational designer. I love Speckle. I believe in the vision. I have to pitch to my CEO or CIO to adopt, and they have a counter. Maybe we have to spend 3 to 4 months investing, migrating data. Is it worth getting ROI? What would be a good way to convince?
Demonstrate by doing so. Usually they're in a position that probably they're not touching tools anymore. So
Mm,
you could sit down and say, well, I'm going to that I'm doing anyway. So let's say I'm a I'll produce
mm,
something that's going to produce some geometry speckle. Here's a URL. Open it on your phone, and that's the kind
mm,
of complete exchange investment that they need. Just to say, actually, if nothing to you more readily what I'm doing outside, you don't
mm,
need a piece of specialist software. It's there on your phone or on your tablet. Simple proposition started. And then you could say, well, at the same time, I'm able to work over here in this software, here working in ArchiCAD or in MicroStation, work on the fit for purpose. And these are the conversations I have every day.
yes. Yeah. And so apart from like enable real-time collaboration, accessible viewer, like you are enabling that data at scale across so many projects. What are some interesting insights from that data? And if you can, like, okay, how can it make better business decisions out of data?
Mhm. So we've made a notice that we ourselves are not mining the data that people store. But I do enjoy having conversations with people who are looking to do just that.
Mm,
We're open to ideas here, and so I've spoken to you, and I've been speaking to other in the AI space, looking to enable companies of data here, and actually it goes back a way. Uh, if I was able to, then what?
mm,
We aren't building anything at Speckle more than just making it available for um, people wanting to deploy any technology to it. So um, definitely looking to work with others to um, more opportunity. But certainly we're not inside Rhino, and it's not
mm,
inside Archi, and it's not inside OpenBridge, Tekla. It's definitely easier when it's an easy to kind of translate and manipulate. Um, sorry, that was sort of a
yeah,
non-answer, really. We're,
yeah. But you have Power BI integration, which can help
Mhm.
people visualize and make better insights through visualization. Yeah.
Really true, and it's actually been eye-opening how that grown, and so are actually coming to and saying our principal use for Speckle is Power BI or just let's say boarding in general. And part of that is that accessibility. So when I said you can be working in Grasshopper and produce something, and then you can send a URL and you can have a 3D view of something, ability and immediate of communicating what's going on. Now, with Power BI or data wrangling, this where I've come from,
Mm,
where you get with that is the ability to craft a story or a narrative, whether that is this is how well, this is where we could do better, this is how much win we're going to have, this is how much cost it's going to be, particularly when people are our impact on the world. So people are looking at embodied carbon calculations. They're looking at lifetime carbon assessment,
mm,
particularly, but also quite interesting. So as you get further, and actually, this is where it gets slightly away. It's like entry level, say, but when people are certainly looking at feeding, data pipelines. So that Speckle is the entry point, so that they can be manipulated once, and then you can for a different way, and to have sophisticated analyses about this now has this implication of consumption, accessibility. Can the decision I've made here enable us to buy things locally or buy things globally? All these sorts of decisions, once it's unleashed from just putting that Revit wall down, I think to enable more than it is to how people are going to use the data that we have. We have ideas based on kind of past experience and past needs. And so it's my job to really say, developer advocate or user advocate, the opportunities. This is one possible use, but really come and tell us and we'll find out together if we can solve your problem.
interesting. I have a rapid fire round to wrap up the interview. We'll have like less than 5 seconds to answer, and you gotta keep it very
Right.
brief. Okay. Your favorite architect,
Um, Oscar Niemeyer.
favorite architecture or urban place.
Kings.
I see. A book which made a big impact in your life.
Hmm. I would say I've got two books. Sorry, that's not rapid fire. I've got It's Difference and Repetition by Deleuze, and the second one, Murray Gell-Mann.
Yeah. Your favorite movie,
Lost Highway.
favorite restaurant in London,
Mm, pass on that one.
uh, a city which is in your travel bucket list.
New York.
I see. Uh, Three words your friend would describe you.
Um, Generous. uh, Cuddly. I was going to say that's the same as generous, so that's the. I'll say that.
I see. Uh, if you were to teach a course, what would you teach?
Mm, does it have to be something that I already can do? Uh,
Apart from Speckle.
um, okay, I would say uh, advanced Lego.
Hmm, interesting. Jonathan, anything which we didn't cover in this interview and you would like to end on that message?
I think I would encourage everyone to not decide too early what it is that they want to do in life. I still don't know the answer. We kicked off by saying things haven't gone by decision, but by choice. And I think be open to choices and be open to opportunities and see where it can take you.
Um, Amazing. And I must say you have a like great energy. It was lovely hosting you, Jonathan. Hope to see you in person in London. Hope at the Speckle Con. Let's see.